Okay, let's talk about Otto von Bismarck. You've probably heard the name, right? But this guy was way more than just a name in a history book. He's often called the architect of modern Germany, and for a very good reason.
But first, let's start with a little thought experiment. Imagine you've got a whole bunch of small, separate states. They all speak the same language, have a similar culture, but they're not one country. How in the world do you bring them all together? Would you try talking it out? Or would you, use a bit more force?
Well, back in the 19th century, this wasn't just some hypothetical question for the German-speaking people. It was very real, and one man had a plan, a very clear and honestly, a pretty ruthless one. His name was Otto von Bismarck.
So, who was this guy, Otto von Bismarck? He wasn't born a king or some famous general, but he would eventually earn the nickname the Iron Chancellor. Let's dig into how he went from a rebellious kid to Prussia's ultimate powerhouse.
Okay, so Bismarck came from a pretty well-off family in Prussia, which was the biggest and baddest of all the German states at the time. As a student, he was super smart, but also a bit of a troublemaker. From day one, he had this core belief: what mattered most was a strong king and a strong government. But honestly, if you knew him back then, you probably wouldn't have put your money on him becoming this legendary history-changing leader. So how did he pull it all off? Bismarck wasn't the type to play by the usual political rules. Nope, he had his own playbook, a whole new way of thinking about how to get things done in politics. And this brings us to a super important word: Realpolitik. It's German for, well, realistic politics. The whole idea is that you make decisions based on what's practical and what makes your country more powerful. Forget about high-minded ideals or what's morally right or wrong. For Bismarck, it was all about one thing: making the state stronger. And nothing, I mean nothing, sums up his philosophy better than his most famous quote. He told the Prussian parliament that the great questions of the day will not be decided by speeches or majority votes, but by blood and iron. You can just imagine the silence in the room. He was basically saying, all right, everyone, talking is over. It's time for action. So what did he actually mean by blood and iron? It's pretty straightforward, really. Blood was all about military strength. He wanted to build a seriously powerful army. And iron, that represented Prussia's booming industry. Its factories, its railroads, all that modern tech. Bismarck was convinced that if you combined a mighty army with a strong economy, you'd be pretty much unstoppable. Okay, so he's got his philosophy, he's got his goal. Now it was time to put that master plan into motion. He was about to use that blood and iron strategy to kick off 3 short, sharp wars. And each one was a deliberate step towards forging a single German nation.
And it really was a brilliant, calculated 3-step plan. First up, a quick war with Denmark. This was like a test run, a way to show off Prussia's new military and kind of sneakily to start some trouble with their rival, Austria. Step 2, the main event, a war against Austria itself. Prussia won so fast it left the rest of Europe just stunned. And just like that, Prussia was the top dog among the German states. And finally, step 3, a war with France. Bismarck was a smart guy. He knew that nothing brings people together like a common enemy. This final war was the glue that would bind all the remaining German states together. And guess what? It totally worked. On January 18th, 1871, the German Empire was officially born. And for the ultimate power move, they held the ceremony in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, the absolute heart of France, their defeated enemy. Talk about making a statement.
This new empire needed some new job titles, right? So the King of Prussia, Wilhelm I, he became the Kaiser, which is just German for emperor. And the man who made it all happen, Bismarck, he became the very first chancellor, basically the head of the whole government.
All right, so building an empire is one thing, but holding it all together, that's a whole different ballgame. Bismarck's next big challenge wasn't from another country. It was from inside Germany itself. So Bismarck found himself fighting a kind of 2-front war at home. On one hand, he launched something called the Kulturkampf, the culture struggle. This was basically a big political fight to weaken the power of the Catholic Church. He was worried that German Catholics would be more loyal to the Pope in Rome than to their new German Kaiser. But on the other hand, to keep the country stable, he did something nobody saw coming, something totally revolutionary. He gave the world its very first social welfare programs. We're talking health insurance, accident insurance, and even pensions for when you get old. Now, this wasn't because he suddenly became a super nice guy. No, this was pure realpolitik. By giving workers this safety net, he hoped to win their loyalty and make them less interested in socialism, which was getting really popular at the time.
Now that Germany was united and powerful, Bismarck's new #1 goal was peace. He knew the new empire needed time and stability to really get going. So he built this incredibly complicated web of alliances with all the other big European powers. The whole point was to keep France on its own, with no friends, and prevent any other big wars from breaking out. And you know what? For almost 20 years, it actually worked.
But, as they say, nothing lasts forever. The Iron Chancellor was about to meet his match, and it wasn't going to be on a battlefield. It was going to be right inside his own palace. An era was coming to an end.
So let's look at the timeline. He becomes chancellor in 1871, rolls out those groundbreaking social laws in the 1880s, but then his time runs out. In 1890, a new Kaiser, Wilhelm II, takes the throne. This new guy is young, ambitious, and he wants to run the show himself. He completely disagreed with Bismarck's careful foreign policy, and he ended up forcing him to resign. Just like that, the architect of the German Empire was pushed aside. He died 8 years later.
But man, what a legacy he left behind. It's just immense. He didn't just create the modern nation of Germany. His whole realpolitik strategy completely changed how international politics was played. And those social security systems we have all over the world today, you can trace them right back to his reforms. He fundamentally changed the entire balance of power in Europe.
And that leaves us with one big, final question to think about. Was Bismarck a brilliant unifier, a political genius who brought his people together? Or was his whole blood and iron approach a dangerous kind of nationalism that kind of paved the way for future conflicts in Europe? The answer, just like the man himself, is incredibly complex.